Hollywood's golden age wasn't just about glitz and glamour. It was also marked by excess and personal struggles. Many iconic stars battled alcohol addiction, often behind closed doors. In this video, we'll dive into the lives of 25 legendary actors who were constantly drunk, despite their brilliant careers. John Barrymore is remembered as one of the greatest actors of the early 20th century, known for his stage performances and impressive film career. His charismatic personality, combined with his stunning good looks, made him one of Hollywood's most famous leading men. However, Barrymore's personal life was far from glamorous. Despite his immense talent, his alcoholism played a significant role in his downfall. By the 1930s, Barrymore had developed a reputation for being a heavy drinker. His alcoholism was infamous in Hollywood, with stories of him arriving drunk on film sets and behaving erratically during shoots. Many filmmakers tolerated his behavior due to his undeniable talent, but his condition only worsened. His love of alcohol began to overshadow his performances, and his career slowly declined. Barrymore's drinking led to failed marriages and a strained relationship with his children. The most notorious event came in 1938 when Barrymore appeared in the film The Great Man Votes, where he struggled to even stay upright on set. His erratic behavior led to his professional and personal downfall. In 1942, John Barrymore died at the age of 60, and while his legacy as a talented actor lives on, the story of his descent into alcoholism remains a poignant reminder of the darker side of fame. Judy Garland is one of the most beloved stars in Hollywood history, best known for her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. However, behind her cheerful persona and iconic performances was a woman battling addiction. Garland's relationship with alcohol started at a young age when MGM studio heads forced her to take pills to keep up with her rigorous filming schedule. Over time, these pills, along with alcohol, became her crutch, and she struggled with substance abuse throughout her career. Garland's drinking became more frequent as she grew older. It was during the filming of A Star is Born in 1954 that her drinking spiraled out of control. Her alcoholism affected her performances, and she would often show up to shoots drunk or hungover. At times, her emotional instability and reliance on alcohol made her difficult to work with. Still, despite these struggles, she continued to deliver unforgettable performances. Garland's battle with alcohol was often overshadowed by her talent, but the toll it took on her life was undeniable. Her health deteriorated as a result of years of drinking, and in 1969, Garland tragically passed away at the age of 47. Her death was a result of an accidental overdose, but it was also the culmination of her long-standing battle with addiction. Judy Garland's legacy is not just defined by her roles, but also by the addiction that plagued her personal life. Marilyn Monroe's life and career are as famous for their brilliance as they are for their tragedy. Monroe, the ultimate sex symbol, became a household name after starring in films such as Some Like It Hot and The 7-Year Itch. But behind the camera, her life was marked by addiction and instability, with alcohol playing a major role in her struggles. Monroe's battle with alcohol began in her early years in Hollywood, and it became worse as her career progressed. Alcohol, along with prescription drugs, was a means of escape from the intense pressures of fame and personal insecurities. Monroe was known for her late-night drinking binges and erratic behavior, often showing up drunk or hungover to set, causing delays and causing tension among her co-stars and directors. Her marriage to playwright Arthur Miller and her on-again, off-again relationship with Joe DiMaggio were also heavily impacted by her alcoholism. It's widely known that her personal life was chaotic and filled with emotional turmoil. As her drinking worsened, so did her professional reputation. In 1962, Monroe's life was tragically cut short when she was found dead in her home at the age of 36. While her death has long been the subject of speculation, it is widely accepted that alcohol and drug abuse played a significant role in her untimely passing. Marilyn Monroe's life is remembered for her immense talent, her vulnerability, and the shadow of addiction that loomed over her career. Errol Flynn was the ultimate swashbuckling hero, known for his roles in the adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. He was one of Hollywood's leading men in the 1930s and 1940s, admired for his dashing good looks and charm. However, Flynn's life off-screen was far more chaotic, with alcohol being a major factor. Flynn's drinking was as legendary as his film roles. Known for his wild behavior and partying, he was often seen in Hollywood bars and clubs, indulging in heavy drinking and living an extravagant lifestyle. Flynn's alcohol consumption was so excessive that it began to affect his professional life. He was known for showing up to film shoots drunk or hungover, causing delays and disrupting the production. His erratic behavior led to conflicts with co-stars and directors, yet his charm and talent kept him in demand. Flynn's personal life was equally tumultuous, with numerous relationships, legal troubles, and run-ins with the law. His drinking became a central issue in his relationships, particularly his marriage to actress Lily Damita, which ended in divorce. In his later years, Flynn's health began to deteriorate due to his alcohol abuse. His drinking played a significant role in his premature death from a heart attack at the age of 50. Despite his wild behavior and struggles with alcohol, Errol Flynn remains an iconic figure in Hollywood history, remembered for both his swashbuckling roles and his off-screen antics. W.C. Fields was one of Hollywood's greatest comedic talents, known for his distinctive voice, sarcastic humor, and memorable roles in films like My Little Chickadee and The Bank Dick. However, Fields' personal life was often overshadowed by his drinking. His fondness for alcohol became a part of his comedic persona, and he frequently incorporated drunken antics into his routines. Fields' heavy drinking began in his early days in show business, and by the time he became a film star, alcohol had a firm hold on him. Despite being a beloved figure in Hollywood, Fields' drinking caused him significant health problems. He was known to be irritable and difficult to work with while intoxicated, yet his comedic genius never faltered. His fondness for whiskey was notorious, and he was often seen at Hollywood parties indulging in alcohol. Fields' personal life was marked by a strained relationship with his family, and he was often absent from the lives of his children. In the later years of his life, Fields' drinking took a toll on his health, and he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. He died in 1946 at the age of 66. His career and legacy forever intertwined with his love for alcohol. W.C. Fields remains an enduring figure in comedy, remembered for his sharp wit, but also for the toll alcohol took on his personal and professional life. Clark Gable, known as the King of Hollywood, was one of the most iconic leading men in cinema history, best remembered for his role as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. Gable's on-screen persona was that of a tough, charismatic man, but his off-screen life was not without complications. Gable's relationship with alcohol was never as widely publicized as some of his contemporaries, but was known that he had a fondness for whiskey. While he didn't have the reputation of being a severe alcoholic, Gable's drinking became more prominent during the later years of his career. His drinking was often tied to personal troubles, including his turbulent marriage to actress Carole Lombard and the pressures of maintaining his stardom. Gable's heavy drinking at times affected his behavior on set, and there were reports of him arriving drunk or showing signs of emotional distress during shoots. His drinking was also a contributing factor to his strained relationships, particularly during his second marriage to actress Kay Williams. Gable's health began to decline in his later years, and it's believed that his alcohol consumption played a role in his heart attack in 1960, leading to his death at the age of 59. Despite his struggles, Clark Gable remains one of the most enduring figures in Hollywood history, remembered for his powerful performances and timeless appeal. Spencer Tracy was one of Hollywood's greatest actors, known for his exceptional performances in films such as Judgment at Nuremberg and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. However, Tracy's personal life was marked by a battle with alcoholism that plagued his career and relationships. Despite his brilliance on screen, his drinking became a constant issue behind the scenes. Tracy's alcoholism began in his early years in Hollywood, and by the 1940s, it was well known in the industry that he would often show up to film sets drunk or hungover. His excessive drinking led to tensions on set, and his inability to handle alcohol became an open secret. His drinking also put a strain on his long-term relationship with actress Katharine Hepburn, with whom he had a complicated, often tumultuous partnership. Hepburn was famously loyal to Tracy, even though she struggled with his alcoholism, and she was frequently by his side during his moments of crisis. Despite these personal challenges, Tracy continued to deliver remarkable performances, winning 2 Academy Awards for Best Actor. However, in the years leading up to his death, Tracy's health declined significantly due to his alcoholism. He passed away in 1967, just a few weeks after completing his final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Spencer Tracy's legacy as an actor is marked not only by his immense talent, but also by the personal demons he faced, making his story a bittersweet reminder of the pressures of stardom in old Hollywood. Ava Gardner was one of the most beautiful and celebrated actresses of her time, known for her roles in films like The Killers of Mogambo. However, her stunning beauty and fame were overshadowed by a volatile personal life and a long-standing battle with alcoholism. Gardner's drinking was notorious, and it often played a part in her tumultuous relationships and professional struggles. Throughout her life, Ava struggled with emotional instability, and alcohol became a means of coping with the pressures of fame. She was known to drink heavily, particularly in the wake of her marriage to Frank Sinatra, which ended in a bitter divorce. Gardner's drinking became more frequent, and she was often seen at Hollywood parties indulging in whiskey or wine. Her alcoholism eventually affected her career, with reports of her being late to set or showing up drunk. Despite these challenges, Ava Gardner remained a beloved figure in Hollywood, and her performances were often lauded for their depth and emotion. However, by the time she reached her 50s, Gardner's health had severely deteriorated, and her drinking was a contributing factor in her declining health. In 1989, she passed away at the age of 67 from pneumonia, a condition made worse by her years of alcohol abuse. Ava Gardner's life is a testament to the destructive power of alcohol, and her legacy remains a blend of glamour, tragedy, and incredible talent. Richard Burton was one of the most intense and accomplished actors of old Hollywood, known for his powerful performances in films like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Spy Who Came In from the Cold. However, Burton's life was marred by his excessive drinking, which often overshadowed his career. Burton's alcoholism was notorious, and it became a central part of his persona both on and off screen. His relationship with alcohol began during his early days in theater and continued throughout his film career. Burton's drinking was often fueled by his emotional struggles, including his tumultuous marriage to actress Elizabeth Taylor. Their relationship was famously stormy, with both actors frequently turning to alcohol as a way to cope with their personal and professional issues. Burton's drinking affected his performances, and on more than one occasion, he arrived on set intoxicated, leading to delays and problems on set. His health deteriorated rapidly due to his alcohol abuse, and by the time of his death in 1984, Burton's body had been ravaged by years of heavy drinking. His death, attributed to a brain hemorrhage, was a tragic end to a life marked by both extraordinary talent and self-destructive habits. Richard Burton remains one of the greatest actors in Hollywood history, but his legacy is also intertwined with the demons he fought, particularly his battle with alcohol. Dorothy Parker, an influential writer, poet, and critic, was an icon of old Hollywood's literary scene. Known for her sharp wit and caustic humor, Parker was also famous for her love of alcohol. She was a regular at New York's Algonquin Round Table, a gathering of writers and actors, where she was known for her biting humor and, of course, her drinking. Parker's alcohol consumption was extensive, and it often led to emotional turmoil and personal issues. Despite her success as a writer, Parker struggled with a sense of inadequacy and dissatisfaction, and alcohol became her way of coping with these feelings. Her drinking, combined with her complex personality, made her a difficult figure to work with at times. Her relationships were often strained, and she frequently found herself in conflict with friends and colleagues. Parker's alcohol abuse worsened as she grew older, and it affected her health. In her later years, she lived in relative obscurity, and her drinking became a major factor in her declining health. Dorothy Parker passed away in 1967 from a heart attack, but her legacy as a sharp, influential writer and her reputation as a heavy drinker continue to define her place in Hollywood history. Parker's story is a poignant reminder that alcohol can consume even the most talented and intelligent individuals, leaving behind a complex legacy that mixes brilliance with self-destruction. Joan Crawford was one of the most iconic actresses of the 1930s and 1940s, known for her roles in films like Mildred Pierce and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Despite her immense success and fame, Crawford's personal life was marked by her struggle with alcoholism. She was known for her demanding and perfectionist personality on set, but off-screen, she often turned to alcohol to cope with the pressures of stardom. Crawford's drinking became more pronounced in the 1950s as her career began to fade, and her public image started to deteriorate. She was infamous for her erratic behavior, particularly when intoxicated. Her alcoholism caused tensions in her personal life, especially with her adopted children. Crawford's drinking led to a breakdown in her relationships, and her once sterling reputation began to crumble. Despite these struggles, Joan Crawford continued to act in films, often delivering memorable performances even when dealing with the effects of alcohol. Crawford's health ultimately suffered due to her long-term alcohol abuse, and she died in 1977 at the age of 69 from cancer, with her drinking playing a significant role in her deteriorating health. Joan Crawford's legacy remains complex, with her incredible talent and beauty often overshadowed by her personal struggles with alcoholism. George Sanders was known for his suave and sophisticated persona on screen, often cast as a villain or charming anti-hero in films such as All About Eve and The Picture of Dorian Gray. However, behind the smooth exterior, Sanders struggled with alcohol throughout his career. His drinking was a major issue, and it led to a number of problems both professionally and personally. Sanders' alcoholism was a key factor in his inability to maintain long-term relationships, and his later years were marked by isolation and depression. Despite this, Sanders continued to work in films, often delivering captivating performances despite the toll alcohol had taken on his health. In his later years, Sanders' drinking worsened, leading to health complications and ultimately contributing to his suicide in 1972. His death at the age of 65 was a tragic end to a career that had once been filled with promise and success. George Sanders' legacy is often overshadowed by his personal struggles with alcohol. Barbara Stanwyck was one of the most talented and versatile actresses of her era, known for films like Stella Dallas and Meet John Doe. However, her success on screen belied the struggles she faced in her personal life, particularly with alcohol. Stanwyck had a reputation for being a hard drinker, especially in her later years. Although she was a professional on set, her alcoholism became more noticeable during her personal life. After a troubled marriage to actor Robert Taylor, Stanwyck's drinking became more excessive. It was said that alcohol was her way of coping with the emotional toll of her failed relationships. Despite her personal challenges, Stanwyck continued to deliver stellar performances in film and television. However, her drinking, along with other personal issues, caused her health to decline. She passed away in 1990, but her career and legacy as one of Hollywood's finest actresses remain, though her battle with alcohol adds a layer of complexity to her story. Humphrey Bogart was a Hollywood legend, known for his roles in iconic films like Casablanca and The Big Sleep. His tough guy persona made him one of the most beloved actors of his time, but his off-screen life was marred by heavy drinking. Bogart's alcoholism was well documented, and it often created difficulties for him in both his personal and professional life. His drinking became a central issue in his relationships, particularly with his second wife, actress Lauren Bacall. Despite this, Bacall remained by his side, even as his health began to deteriorate. Bogart's drinking was most pronounced in his later years, and it contributed to the early decline in his health. His liver was severely damaged due to his excessive drinking, and in 1957, he passed away from esophageal cancer at the age of 57. Bogart's legacy as one of Hollywood's greatest actors remains intact, but his battle with alcoholism serves as a reminder of the toll addiction can take on even the most successful stars. Kirk Douglas was one of Hollywood's most enduring stars, known for his roles in films like Spartacus and Paths of Glory. While Douglas's career was filled with groundbreaking performances, his personal life was often overshadowed by his heavy drinking. During the height of his fame, Douglas became known for his party-loving lifestyle, which included frequent drinking and socializing at Hollywood's most exclusive spots. His alcoholism affected his personal relationships, including his marriage to and by dance. However, despite his battle with addiction, Douglas continued to maintain a successful career, earning an Academy Award nomination for Champion and eventually winning an honorary Oscar in 1996. As he grew older, Douglas became more reflective about his past, including his drinking. In his later years, he acknowledged the toll alcoholism took on his health and relationships, particularly with his children. After surviving a stroke in 1996, he made efforts to turn his life around, focusing on family and philanthropy. Kirk Douglas passed away in 2020 at the age of 103, leaving behind a legacy that was built not only on his acting, but also on his ability to overcome his personal struggles. His journey from a hard-drinking Hollywood icon to a beloved patriarch is a testament to his resilience. Frank Sinatra was not only one of the most influential singers and actors of his time, but also a man whose personal life was as legendary as his career. Known for his smooth voice and unmatched charisma, Sinatra's fame was paired with his notorious love for alcohol. His drinking was often linked to his personal struggles, including his tumultuous relationships and intense emotional ups and downs. In particular, Sinatra's marriage to Ava Gardner was marked by drinking binges, and their explosive relationship was fueled by alcohol. He was a regular in Hollywood social circles, often seen indulging in whiskey or wine at parties. Sinatra's drinking began to spiral out of control in the 1950s and 1960s as he dealt with both professional setbacks and personal challenges. His alcoholism sometimes interfered with his work, and his parties were notorious for their wild nature. Despite this, Sinatra remained a popular figure, and his career continued to thrive. His drinking ultimately affected his health, and in his later years, Sinatra began to slow down, making fewer public appearances. Frank Sinatra passed away in 1998 at the age of 82, and his legacy as a musical legend remains intact. His battle with alcohol, however, serves as a reminder of the pressures that even the brightest stars face. Tallulah Bankhead was known for her bold, fearless personality, both on and off the screen. A celebrated actress in the 1930s and 1940s, she was equally famous for her heavy drinking, which was a constant feature of her career. Bankhead's love for alcohol was well known in Hollywood, and she would often be seen drinking heavily at parties and social gatherings. Her excessive drinking led to erratic behavior, and she was known for causing scenes in public, often drawing attention to her out-of-control lifestyle. Despite her often chaotic personal life, Bankhead continued to act and give remarkable performances, particularly in films like Lifeboat and The Pirate. However, her alcoholism began to take a toll on her career, and she found herself in less favorable roles as time went on. In the 1950s, Bankhead's health deteriorated as a result of her drinking, and she passed away in 1968 from pneumonia, a complication of her long-standing alcohol abuse. Tallulah Bankhead's story is one of extreme highs and lows, where her undeniable talent was often overshadowed by her struggles with alcohol, but her unique voice and presence continue to make her a memorable figure in Hollywood's history. Montgomery Clift was a highly respected actor known for his roles in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. He was often hailed as one of the most talented actors of his generation, but his career was marred by personal turmoil and heavy drinking. Clift's drinking began early in his life, and it was closely tied to his emotional struggles. The pressures of fame and a difficult childhood led him to alcohol as a coping mechanism, and it became a constant in his personal life. His alcoholism was compounded by a tragic car accident in 1956 that left him physically and emotionally scarred. Following the accident, Clift became more reliant on alcohol and drugs, which took a toll on his health and career. Despite these personal challenges, he continued to work, delivering some of his most memorable performances. However, his drinking eventually caught up with him. Clift's health deteriorated rapidly, and he passed away in 1966 from a heart attack, a direct result of his years of substance abuse. Montgomery Clift's tragic life serves as a reminder of the dangers of alcohol addiction, and although his career was cut short, his work continues to influence actors and filmmakers today. Ernie Kovacs was one of the most innovative and daring comedians of the 1950s and early 1960s. His groundbreaking work in television earned him a reputation as a true madcap genius who revolutionized comedy, especially with his zany antics and surreal style. However, behind the scenes, Kovacs' life was far from as comedic as his routines. Known for his sharp wit and unpredictable humor, he had a darker side that involved a long and public battle with alcoholism. This was something that many of his colleagues and fans noticed, though it often went underreported at the time. His drinking became part of his public persona, though it wasn't until later in his career that the extent of his issues with alcohol became widely known. Ernie Kovacs' love of alcohol became an unfortunate part of his on-set reputation. Those who worked with him on shows like The Ernie Kovacs Show and Take a Good Look could attest to his sometimes erratic behavior. It was not uncommon for Kovacs to show up on set, having clearly indulged the night before, often affecting his performance. Kovacs' drinking problem wasn't just a matter of personal struggle, but also a professional issue. On more than one occasion, his late-night drinking binges led to missed rehearsals, delays, and sometimes less-than-perfect performances. Still, Kovacs managed to maintain his genius, often improvising his way through these less-than-ideal situations. But the toll of his alcoholism on his personal life and his career was undeniable. Sadly, Kovacs' life was cut short in 1962 when he died in a car accident at the age of 42. At the time of his death, Kovacs had been clean for a period, trying to fight his demons. Still, his legacy lives on through his comedic genius and the mark he left on television. Many modern comedic minds still cite him as a major influence, even if his struggles with alcohol cast a long shadow on his personal story. Jackie Gleason, the iconic actor and comedian, was known as much for his outsized personality as for his love of drinking. Famous for his role as Ralph Cramden in The Honeymooners, Gleason was a comedic force of nature whose wild behavior off-screen often eclipsed his talent. With a powerful presence that could make even the most stoic audience burst into laughter, he was the epitome of old Hollywood excess. But beneath the bravado and wit, there was a man struggling with alcohol dependency. For much of his career, Jackie Gleason was never far from a drink. In fact, his fondness for alcohol was so pronounced that it became a hallmark of his off-screen persona. His fondness for whiskey in particular was well known, and many anecdotes and stories surfaced about his larger-than-life drinking habits. Those close to him often spoke about how Gleason could easily outdrink anyone in the room, seemingly impervious to the effects of alcohol. On set, Gleason's drinking often disrupted his work, leading to missed calls or unpredictable performances. It was said that his co-stars and directors had learned to expect the unexpected when dealing with Gleason. His off-the-cuff remarks and unpredictable actions were often a result of his erratic drinking habits. However, even when under the influence, Gleason was still capable of giving audiences the unforgettable performances that made him a beloved figure in television. Despite his issues with alcohol, Jackie Gleason remained an enduring figure in Hollywood. Over time, he tried to address his drinking problem, and in his later years, he made a concerted effort to get sober. Yet, even after his attempts to cut back, the damage had been done. His liver, battered by years of excessive drinking, failed him, and Gleason passed away in 1987, leaving behind a legacy that was, unfortunately, colored by his battle with alcohol. Katharine Hepburn, often considered one of the greatest actresses of all time, had a long and storied career, leaving behind an indelible mark on Hollywood. Known for her fierce independence, sharp intelligence, and self-assured demeanor, Hepburn broke barriers in an industry that often expected actresses to play demure roles. However, despite her commanding presence on screen, Hepburn was also known to have struggled with alcohol. This side of her character was less publicized, but still an important aspect of her personal life. Hepburn's drinking was never as publicized as some of her contemporaries, but those who were close to her spoke of her fondness for liquor. During her long Hollywood career, she was said to have a complex relationship with alcohol. While Hepburn was never publicly known to have fallen into the same depth of alcoholism as some of her peers, she reportedly had a drinking problem that started in her younger years. In the 1930s and 1940s, she was often seen sipping cocktails at social gatherings, a habit that she maintained throughout her career. What set Hepburn apart from other stars, however, was her ability to maintain control despite her indulgence. She never let her drinking interfere with her work. Her off-screen persona was that of a strong, fiercely independent woman, and on set, she was known for her professionalism. Her work ethic was legendary, and she always delivered powerful performances, including her iconic roles in The African Queen and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. In her later years, Hepburn reportedly scaled back her drinking, but it remained a part of her life. Despite her struggle with alcohol, her legacy remains untarnished by her private battles. Hepburn passed away in 2003 at the age of 96, leaving behind a trail of unforgettable performances and a reputation for being one of the most influential actresses in cinema history. Grace Kelly, the quintessential Hollywood princess, is remembered as one of the most beautiful and graceful actresses to ever grace the silver screen. Her transition from a beloved film star to the Princess of Monaco is the stuff of fairy tales, but behind the glamorous image was a woman who faced her own personal struggles. Known for her role in High Noon and Rear Window, Kelly was a beloved figure whose life was far from as perfect as it seemed. Though much of her public life was spent as a dignified royal, Grace Kelly's earlier years in Hollywood were marked by an indulgence in alcohol. It was reported that during her time in the film industry, she often frequented Hollywood's party scene, where alcohol flowed freely. Kelly's drinking habits were relatively discreet but were well known among those who worked with her. Friends and colleagues recall that she could hold her own when it came to drinking, especially when socializing with other Hollywood elites. Despite this, Kelly's drinking never overshadowed her career. She was a talented and highly respected actress, earning an Academy Award for her performance in The Country Girl. However, her marriage to Prince Rainier of Monaco brought her to the European royal spotlight, where the pressures of being in the public eye weighed heavily on her. In the years after her marriage, Grace Kelly reportedly scaled back on her drinking, but it remained part of her life. Tragically, Kelly's life was cut short when she died in a car accident in 1982, but she continues to be remembered as a Hollywood icon, her legacy far more defined by her acting and royal status than by any personal battles she may have faced. Peter O'Toole was one of Hollywood's most charismatic and talented actors, known for his unforgettable portrayal of T. Lawrence in Lawrence of Arabia. But for all his cinematic success, O'Toole's career was marred by his reputation as a heavy drinker. His drinking habits were well known, and O'Toole's adventures with alcohol were as legendary as his acting. Behind the charm and wit that he exuded on screen, O'Toole was a man who often turned to the bottle to cope with the pressures of fame. O'Toole's love for alcohol became almost as famous as his acting. On set, he was often the life of the party, frequently indulging in drinking, which, at times, led to wild behavior. His co-stars and directors knew that O'Toole was unpredictable and that his drinking could sometimes affect the production of a film. However, despite his erratic behavior, O'Toole remained one of the finest actors of his generation, always delivering unforgettable performances. He famously said that, "I never drink in the morning. I'm not a drunk. But after noon, I'm free." This self-aware humor only added to the legend of his wild lifestyle. O'Toole's drinking did take its toll on his health, and his struggles with alcohol led to hospitalizations and strained relationships. Still, his career never really faltered. In fact, it seemed that the more O'Toole embraced his wild side, the more audiences adored him. O'Toole tried to address his drinking issues later in life. He made a conscious effort to stay sober in his later years, but by then, the damage had already been done. His health was permanently affected, and O'Toole eventually passed away in 2013 at the age of 81, leaving behind a rich legacy in film. Lee Marvin was the quintessential tough guy actor, known for his roles in The Dirty Dozen and Cat Ballou. Off-screen, he earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's most notorious drinkers. Marvin's hard-drinking lifestyle was legendary, with stories of him drinking almost constantly, often in the company of fellow actors and movie crew members. For Marvin, alcohol seemed to be as integral to his image as his tough guy persona. It was said that Marvin could drink almost anyone under the table, and he often found himself in wild bar brawls or drunken escapades. His drinking became so ingrained in his persona that it was part of what made him such a popular actor. He was known to have a devil-may-care attitude, both on and off set, and his drinking fits perfectly into that image. For Marvin, alcohol was not just a vice, it was part of his social life, an escape from the pressures of fame and Hollywood. However, Marvin's drinking didn't just stay on the set or in the bars. It affected his personal relationships and was something he struggled to manage throughout his career. Despite this, Marvin's acting talent never wavered. He was always able to deliver stellar performances, making him a standout in every movie he appeared in. In his later years, Marvin sought to curb his drinking habits, eventually becoming sober. However, the toll of his earlier drinking years had already left its mark on his health. Marvin passed away in 1987, but his legacy as one of Hollywood's toughest stars remains. Robert Mitchum was one of Hollywood's most iconic hard-boiled actors, known for his tough, laid-back screen presence and roles in noir classics like Out of the Past and Cape Fear. But behind the camera, Mitchum was just as rugged and unpredictable, with a well-earned reputation for being a heavy drinker. In fact, he wore his boozy reputation like a badge of honor, often brushing off criticism or concern with a smirk and a wisecrack. Mitchum's love of alcohol started early in his career and followed him throughout his life. On and off the set, he was known for sipping bourbon or whiskey, often starting early in the day and continuing well into the night. He was notoriously difficult to manage on set when he'd been drinking, but directors and producers usually put up with his habits because of his undeniable screen presence and the cult-like following he attracted. One of the most famous stories about Mitchum involves his 1948 arrest for marijuana possession, an incident that was sensationalized in the press. But while that scandal grabbed headlines, his drinking problem remained a consistent, albeit quieter, issue. Despite this, Mitchum's talent was never in doubt. He had a way of making every line sound natural and every performance feel effortless. Even into his older years, Mitchum remained a heavy drinker. He rarely made apologies for his lifestyle and seemed to view his vices as part of the Hollywood experience. Mitchum died in 1997, but his cool, boozy image is still remembered today.